Hi, Dr. Danny. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on, Delisha. And more importantly, thank you for spreading some joy in the world. We need a lot more of you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. I love that. And thank you too for, dedicating yourself to this amazing knowledge of yours. I really found it really insightful when I was going through your bio. I was really impressed and nah, 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 nah. So thank you so very much for that, Dr. Danny. Okay,
Thank you.
Doctor. Yeah, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. All right. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking, because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, Dr. Danny, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge, and darkness means ignorance. I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I don't want to remain in the dark. And that's why our conversation today is going to be very important to me and even to the audience. The second reason why I'm excited to have Dr. Danny on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You know, we live in an age where information is as abundant as the grain of a sand. It's quite everywhere. We've got a lot of information flying here and there. And these folks trust me for quality information. And that's why I was so excited when I came across your profile. Because I know I'm going to get aliens from them. Yeah, Elisha, you did a good job for bringing Dr. Danny on. So, for that reason, Dr. Danny, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your journey, personal journey, professional journey, how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Dr. Danny, over to you.
Excellent. Well, Aisha, my name is Dr. Danny Brassell, and I'm on a mission to bring joy back into education and the workplace. And I do that by helping people build up their communication skills. There's four aspects of communication. Those are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And so I've established businesses that address all four of those aspects. First of all, I've written 18 books, just finished number 18 last week. Secondly, I speak over 100 dates all around the world. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I'll be speaking in South Africa next week. Third, I have the world's leading reading engagement program, which in just over 2 months shows parents how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. And then finally, in terms of listening, I've become a coach with my friend Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson, where we work with individuals, entrepreneurs, and businesses leverage speaking on stages as a major client lead source. So say that 5 times fast. That's a mouthful.
Amazing. That's a good what you're doing. I love that. Actually, I fell in love with reading some some years back, some years ago. And before that time, okay, I find reading as something quite stressful and I feel like, oh man, no, 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 I just can't sit down all alone and be reading it. You see, I was so ignorant. And that's why when I came across you, I said, nah, I've got to, listen to you speak because I believe there are some things I'm still going to learn from you. So I love that. That's a good one you're doing. Okay, so shall we get started with the questions, Dr. Danny?
Great.
Okay, so let us begin first with the very important one. You know, why don't people read? Can you talk to us about why you think most people don't, want to read or enjoy reading?
I think the reason a lot of people don't read is because in school they were told what to read. For example, you live in Nigeria. Nigeria has only been a democracy since the 1960s, and it was under British rule. Well, you still have a British schooling system, and so you're forced to read people like Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare and Jane Austen. There's nothing wrong with those authors,
That's
but
right.
I think a lot of students would relate a lot more to Nigerian authors like a Chinua Achebe, somebody like that. I know
And I
when
love
I
that.
was in yeah, when I was in high school, I was forced to read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And no offense to people that love that book, but the book is about Hester Prynne, and she commits adultery, and so she's forced to wear an A on her chest. And I raised my hand in class and I asked my teacher if I could wear a B on my chest because I was so bored reading that book. And so when people ask me why don't people read, I think the reason is most people are told what to read. They don't get to choose what they want to read. And the research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. People who read more read better. So the first strategy I would share with your audience is if you want to become a better reader, just read whatever you are interested in. If you love reading fashion magazines, read fashion magazines. If you love reading about sporting events, read the sports page. You'll get better at reading. The person who I always tell parents, the little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to be a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything. Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare, but first of all, you got to get the kid hooked. So that's a very long answer to your short question.
But that was well detailed, you know. It answered the question properly and well explained. I got that. So let us talk about the importance, okay? Why is reading important? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so there's plenty of readers that don't necessarily become effective leaders, but I have never read about an effective leader who is not an avid reader. And it doesn't matter in what field. If you look in military history, most of the famous generals of the world, Charles de Gaulle from France, he was an avid reader. If you look at statespeople like Winston Churchill, he was an avid reader. Look at athletes. I could have kissed LeBron James, the basketball player, before the NBA Finals when he was playing for the Miami Heat. They showed him in the locker room reading The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I was like, wow, you just did more to get kids excited about reading than I'll ever do. Same thing in business. Wealthiest people in the world, people like Warren Buffett and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they spend most of their days reading. And so reading is important to your success, whatever field you choose to enter.
I got that. Reading is important to your success, whatever field you choose to enter. I got that. You know, you're right because I remember back then when I was in um, high school, I I didn't really perform well, I tell you. And the reason to that was because I don't practice reading. And there was a
Mm.
particular young guy like that, the same class. Oh man, it's just so brilliant. And you see, I then just started studying how come he knew so many stuff when being asked a question. And I discovered that while we are busy playing during the playing time, break time, this guy's busy reading, you know. Then when the time comes for us to sit and answer questions, he just answers this stuff with ease. And we then be scratching our heads, trying to. So I get that. I get that. Okay, let us talk about positive habit. How do we develop positive habits? Okay, do you hear me? Or do I repeat
I
myself?
didn't hear you. I'm sorry, Elisha.
Okay. I said, let us talk about positive habits. How do we develop positive habits?
Well, that's a great question, Elisha. I always tell people that resolutions fail, routines succeed. So at the beginning of the new year, everybody lists all the different things that they want to do, and
That's right.
studies show that most people have given up by January 15th. Only 2 weeks to give up. What you need to do is to create an actual routine. And so my reading program, there's two numbers I always point out to people that they have to remember. Those numbers are 67 and 20. So a lot of people will tell you it takes 21 days to change a habit. And to those people, I say, show me the research. It's a completely fabricated number. I know exactly where the number comes from. It comes from a great book written in 1960 by Dr. Maxwell Maltz called Psychocybernetics. Now, Dr. Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and in the preface of the book, he said it took most of his patients about 21 days to get used to their new faces. Well, a lot of personal development self-help gurus, a lot of people I respect, by the way, started telling people that it would take 21 days to change a habit, and this is based on no research whatsoever. Well, researchers at the University of London in 2009 did a habit formation study, and they determined it took anywhere from 18 to 254 days to change a habit, and the average was 66 days. I don't like the number 66, so I threw in a bonus day, 67 days. And it depends on the type of habit you're trying to create. So, for example, if you want to drink a glass of water before breakfast, that might take 18 days to form that habit. But if you want to quit smoking, that could take 254 days to change that habit. And here's why this is important, Elisha. Let's say you go on a diet and eat healthier for 21 days, but then on day 22, you fall off the wagon, you go back to your old habits. Well, you blame yourself, which is wrong because the research shows it takes at least 3 times longer than that to form a habit. So that first number is 67. The second number is 20. Now, researchers were interested in what makes successful students successful. And so they looked for habits that these students had, and they discovered one that just blew them away. It was the number of minutes spent reading outside of school. They looked at the lower students, the average students, and the higher students. First off, the lower students, the kids in the 20th percentile, your failing students, your bottom students, they average less than a minute a day reading outside of school. That didn't surprise anybody. That's probably why they're not doing so well in school. The next number did surprise the researchers. The kids in the middle of the class, the 70th percentile, C students, average students, they average 9.6 minutes a day reading outside of school. And when I'm doing a live training with parents, this is when the room gets really quiet and the first parent raises their hand and says, wait a second, are you saying if I can encourage my kid to read 10 minutes a day outside of school, I can take him from the bottom of the class to the middle of the class? That's exactly what I'm saying. There's a lot of research to support this, but the next number really blew away the researchers. The kids near the top of the class, the 90th percentile, A- students, your best students, do they average 3 hours a day reading outside of school? No. Do they average 1 hour a day reading outside of school? No. The average was just over 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day. That's the entire goal of my program, is to show parents how to get their kids reading for at least 20 minutes a day outside of school. And here's 2 things that are very important for your audience to know. First of all, the minutes don't have to be consecutive. So you can read 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 3 minutes here. Second of all, being read aloud to is just as good as reading on your own. And that's why I listen to podcasts and books on tape, because it counts. Those minutes count. And so I always tell a parent, if it takes you 10 minutes each way to take your kid to school, make them listen to an audiobook while they're walking to and from school or driving to and from school. There's your 20 minutes right there. And so habit formation, it's getting people into a daily routine like brushing your teeth and showering. At least I hope your audience is doing both of those things on a daily basis.
Amazing. I love that. I love that, Danny. Oh man. You know, now you just proved me right. When I came across your profile and I knew it, knew it. And you see, I am always excited when I get to learn new things, of which just happened right now. I love that. Thank you so very much. So let us get personal a bit. All right. How many books do you read a month? Per month now, how many books do you read?
Well, that's a good question, Elisha. It's ironic that people consider me America's leading reading ambassador because I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian, and I always hated the library. The place always smelt funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always an elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There was always a freaky homeless guy by the bookshelves that thought he was a vampire. I always hated going to the library. It wasn't until I taught in the inner city in South Central Los Angeles where I saw a lot of my students didn't have the advantages I had growing up. And I basically said, shame on me. I was blessed, Elisha. Both of my parents were in the home. We were poor, but we always had food on the table. And my parents always read to us kids. They read in front of us kids, and we had plenty of access to reading materials. And so now I'm an avid reader. I have one of the world's top book clubs online, lazyreaders.com, which when people subscribe, it's a free subscription once a month for the rest of your life. I give them 10 book recommendations, 3 or 4 adult level, 3 or 4 young adult level, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages. So you can read something really quick while you're stuck in a meeting or whatever. And so because of that, I have book publishers and authors sending me books all the time. And so I'd say on an average year, I go through, and this doesn't mean I read the entire book, but I go through probably about 5,000 books a year. Now, a lot of those are
Oh.
children's books with pictures and things like that, but I do have to go through lots of books to meet the needs of different people. And of course, there's books that I prefer. I always prefer reading biographies. I prefer sports books. And again, if there's one strategy I would share with your audience is figure out what you like to read and read just that. If you like to read comic books, read comic books. If you like to read long, extensive romance novels, read long, extensive romance novels, whatever turns you on.
Amazing. I got that. I prefer historical books, non-fiction. There's
Mm-hmm.
self-improvement and communication skill. Okay, that's going to lead to this one now. All right. What are some practical ways people can improve their speaking? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so this is really my passion. I work with all kinds of entrepreneurs and executives on how to craft engaging presentations that build up, that get them more customers, or if it's a pastor, more people tithing to your church, or if it's a nonprofit owner, more people donating to your cause. And so, the one strategy, if I could give one strategy to your audience, is when you're giving a speech, don't talk about your successes, talk about your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you talk about your own personal triumphs over failure, the more you're going to be able to relate to your audience, where they're going to be like, oh, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. And that's why, your podcast is so important, Elisha. I mean, there's somebody out there that's watching you and saying, huh, Elisha, and I guarantee you, the first time you gave this is the other thing people have to understand. It takes time to get good at anything. So the first time you did this podcast, it was horrible. And the second time you did this podcast, it was
Right,
horrible, but
that's
it
right.
wasn't as horrible as the first time. And now you've gotten into a flow, and it's the same thing with speaking. It's all about the reps.
I got that. Oh, man. I find you really, really knowledgeable, and it is quite beautiful to speak with you because your words are insightful. I love that. So let us talk about stage fright. All right. A lot of people who want to go into public speaking, most of them have this issue with, ooh, nervous, these large
Mhm.
crowds and all of that. So how do you help people with stage fright?
Well, that's a great question, Elisha. So I was speaking to a school in India, and I got all the kids all excited and pumped up. And after I was speaking, this little boy approached me. He was about 6 years old, and he had tears in his eyes. And I noticed he was missing his left arm. And he looked up at me and he said, "How can I succeed?" And so I got down to his eye level, and I said, "Well, when I was your age, I went to 18 different schools before I was 12 years old. Everybody in school used to call me stupid because I stuttered. And eventually I got it."
I got that. I got that. Okay, Dr. Danny, to bring this to an end, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those ones who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, you've said some amazing stuff, I tell you, and it resonated and they would love to learn more. How can that be possible? Thank you so very much too, Dr. Danny. I truly appreciate it. So that's gonna be the end of the show. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing those beautiful words with us, you know. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Dr. Danny.